Hey guys, Future Sarah here during the editing process. When I started this video, I had no idea how long it was going to be. I was originally just going to do a hybrids and integrates video, but after I edited and started putting things together, I realized that it was going to be just one huge beast of a video that I figured you guys might enjoy more if I split it up into hybrids for one video and integrates for the other video. So I'm going to start this video out with the integrates, and then the next video is going to be on the hybrids. I also wanted to mention before this video and the next video as well that I will be putting a lot of collages up on the screen, and after compiling the video and everything else, I realized that they're not as easy to understand as I expected them to be. So if you see a collage with two snakes kind of up at the top and then one at the bottom. The two snakes at the top are the two separate species, and then the one at the bottom is the cross between the two species. If you see three snakes in a row, the ones on each end are the different individual species, and the one in the middle is the combination. So I just wanted to mention that before I started this video because I kind of realized, like I said, it was a little bit confusing when I was editing. So I hope that you enjoy this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey everybody, Sarah here. So before I jump into this video, I just want to say I have some exciting news. I'm actually monetized now, kind of. So if you've been seeing ads on the videos before this, literally since like before this week, that was just YouTube. Straight up YouTube getting money. I know a lot of people are like, well, what do you mean you're not getting paid to make these videos? Like, I see ads on your videos. Yes, there were ads, but that's because YouTube puts ads on anything that they can put ads on, and I have to actually apply to get some of that money. In other words, I have to actually like apply to, you know, be paid for work that I do with YouTube. So we're actually monetized now. As of this morning, I had made a whole 82 cents. So, you know, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed and shared and stuff like that. Obviously, this isn't going to be a huge lucrative thing for me, but it is nice to know that YouTube recognizes me enough to say that I'm worth 82 cents so far, and hopefully that continues to grow. So that's just an exciting announcement from me. I also wanted to let you guys know I actually do have some snakes available on my website right now if you are looking. They probably won't be available for very long. I'm a very small scale breeder, so when I have snakes available, it's usually kind of trickles in. It's usually one at a time, two at a time, three at a time. I rarely have more than like 4 or 5 snakes become available at once, and they're usually gone pretty quickly. So if you're wanting to get a snake from me specifically this season, I do have some up on my website right now, so check that out. It's sarahsnakeshop.com. I will link it in the description below, and there's also merch and books and stuff on there, so if you'd like to purchase anything else, it would be awesome. We might be going through another lockdown pretty soon because of the Delta variant. So if you are needing a mask, I have some awesome snake masks on there as well. So just go ahead and check it out. It just supports me and, you know, all that stuff. I'm going to jump into the video. Today is going to be kind of a redo of an old video. I've been getting a few requests here and there for me to do an updated hybrid video with photos, because the hybrids are really like sort of complicated, and this might actually have to be more of like a series if I'm going to be going over all of these hybrids in detail. Now I'm not going to be going over all of the hybrids in detail here. I'm just going to sort of highlight the more common hybrids and show you guys photos of those. But if there are any hybrids in particular that you would like to see a very detailed video on, I'm happy to do that. Just let me know from the list that I, you know, go through today if there's any that you are really curious about, because different hybrids definitely have different markers. So when I say hybrid markers, it's like, oh, well, the shape of the head or the color of the eyes or the keel and the scales, stuff like that. There's going to be different markers when you are breeding something that is, you know, things that are two different species. So if you would like to know details about any specific hybrid that I talk about in this video, I would love to know what that is. I'm going to actually start with a term that we don't really use very often, but I think it's a term that's really important that will separate what like an extreme hybrid versus an intergrade. Intergrade is the term. So an intergrade is any kind of species. We talk about it more in snakes than in other things because most other types of things don't really breed together. Sometimes you can hear about it in like fish and stuff like that that are closely related, but we're talking about it in snake terms obviously right now. An intergrade is any kind of hybrid that occurs naturally in the wild because the two species are very closely related and they also share an area that they typically live in. So corn snakes are mostly native to the sort of southeastern United States. Some of them go up as far north as Kentucky. Then they go pretty much as far west as I think like Mississippi and areas like that. Sometimes like, you know, in Louisiana and all in that whole area you'll see some. So that kind of gives you an idea of the area that we're talking about with corn snakes. So you're kind of thinking, I'll just put a map up that kind of shows the general area that corn snakes are. Like I said, you might find some in southern Virginia. Probably not going to find them as far north as West Virginia, but there are some like in a little bit in Tennessee, a little bit in Kentucky, and they go as far over as like some will creep over into Louisiana. But that's about the area that we're looking at. So the intergrades are going to be the species that are closely related to corn snakes that also live in the same area, and we can find some wild hybrids of them occasionally. So the best example of this is the Emeryii or Great Plains rat snake. That is where we get our creamsicle corn snakes and the root beer corn snakes and the cinnamons and stuff like that. And I'll go over all of that. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what that term means. And so I will occasionally still say hybrid, but what I really mean when I say hybrid that's like closely related, like the term that we have used in the past is intergrade. So the first one that I want to talk about is one that I already mentioned, and that is the corn snake crossed with the Great Plains rat snake known as the Emeryii. So the species for corn snake, the species name is Pantherodon Upsalata. And really the only reason that it's important to remember that is to remember the Pantherodon term. The species is Guttatus, the species name, and the Pantherodon is the genus name. The reason that it's important to remember this is so that when I'm listing these with their species names, you'll kind of get an idea of how far apart they are as far as their relation to each other, and why some of these hybrids are easier to create than others. So the first other species that I want to talk about is the Great Plains rat snake, otherwise known as the Emeryii. So it's Pantherodon Emeryii. And so we're still within that Pantherodon genus, and a lot of the snakes that are going to be in that Pantherodon genus are going to be able to breed together relatively easily, and many of them are also in a very close proximity to each other. So you're going to see a lot of intergrades with snakes of those genus species layouts. So this is going to be the most common corn snake hybrid that we see in the hobby. This is what has created our creamsicles, root beers, stuff like that, like I mentioned. Emeryii by themselves, I like to call them Emeryii. A lot of people are just going to call them Great Plains rat snake or the Emery's rat snake. Any of these are correct. I have always just said Emeryii because why would I type out the word Emery's rat snake when I could just say Emeryii? Just put an I on the end of the word. It's similar, and Great Plains rat snake is also a really long term, so I like to just say Emeryii. That's just my personal preference. So if I say Emeryii, I just mean it's the Great Plains rat snake. Emeryii actually used to be considered a subspecies of corn snake until about the mid-90s. So back when corn snakes were first beginning to be bred and sold as pets, it was not uncommon to go ahead and breed some of these Emery's rat snakes into your corn snake lines if you wanted to add a little bit more yellow, a little bit more color, if you wanted the pattern to look a little more spicy. And when I say spicy pattern, it has more, I want to say, texture to its pattern, and it also has more saddle blotches, and the saddle blotches aren't always shaped like saddles, whereas in corn snakes the saddle blotches are almost always shaped like saddles. In the Emeryii rat snake, sometimes you're going to see them almost look like tiger stripes instead. So like I said, I consider it to be a little bit more of just an interesting, more textured pattern than what we see in the average corn snake. So if you wanted to get this sort of more yellow tone and this more textured pattern to your corn snake lines, it was not uncommon at all to go ahead and breed these emerii into your corn snake lines, especially when it was just considered a subspecies of corn snake at the time. There was no thought of this is a whole other species. But then at some point in the mid-90s, taxonomists decided that the emerii rat snake was its own complete different species, and then overnight all of these corn snakes were hybrids, or intergrades rather. But all of a sudden they went from being just, a mix between a species and its subspecies to a completely, just a hybrid. So it's kind of still debated in the corn snake community whether or not we should even consider these to be hybrids. It doesn't seem to affect the hobby very much. The scaleless corn snakes, where the scaleless actually originated with an emerii cross, with scaleless corn snakes being so prevalent, obviously, and accepted as well for the most part, it's obviously not that big of an issue for the hobby overall that the emerii rat snake blood is in a lot of corn snake lines, because we do continue to breed it really without a second thought. I personally don't love these hybrids, however, I do have one. I have a creamsicle, which is an ultramel version of the creamsicle. So it's just an ultramel that has some emerii blood in her. And she's a little bit picky, more picky of a feeder. Her babies are a little bit more feisty. So it all kind of just depends. I personally do think that the emerais rat snakes and a lot of the sort of hybrids that come from them are going to be a little bit more feisty than just a straight up corn snake. So I don't personally love them as pets, but everybody has their own, and they're not all bad. They're not all feisty. So that's going to be your most common. The next most common intergrade that I want to talk about that's actually becoming more and more common is the intergrade between the corn snake and the Kaschi rat snake, also known as Slowinskii or the Slowinski's rat snake. And this again is within our Pantherophis umbrella. That's Pantherophis slowinskii. So again, also very closely related to corn snakes, and they actually look very much like a corn snake. And there was also a relatively recent taxonomic change with them that sort of set them apart from corn snakes as well. And a lot of people are starting to breed them more and more. Kaschi, or the Slowinskii's rat snake, or Slowinskii's rat snake, also has some of its own mutations. The most notable, I would say, is the silverleaf mutation. And I actually talked a lot about the silverleaf mutation in one of my last videos, my sun-kissed video. I think that this silverleaf mutation looks a lot like what an anery sun-kissed kind of looks like. It's not exactly the same, but it kind of gives me very similar vibes. I always think it's really interesting to see separate species that have very similar gene mutations. We've seen this, I talked about it a little bit in the tessera video about how the tessera mutation looks very similar to a king snake mutation that's out there called Newport, and it could very well be that they're completely unrelated to each other and they just look similar and act similar, and that's very similar to what silverleaf is, in my opinion, to something like sun-kissed, where they have a very similar sort of pattern alteration. The only difference is sun-kissed is also like a hypomelanistic mutation, whereas silverleaf is, I want to say, it's not an anerythristic mutation, but it's kind of like a hypoerythristic mutation. So that makes it really, really cool. Just thought I would note that these do have their own mutations separately. And if anyone out there ever does start breeding Kaschi rat snakes, I highly recommend that you do keep some pure lines out there. There is kind of a fear in the corn snake community that Kaschi rat snakes will more or less go extinct in the hobby because they will be bred in with corn snakes so much that they will be relatively indistinguishable, and very few people or no people will actually be breeding pure Kaschi rat snakes anymore. So if you do ever plan on having any of these or breeding any of these, I do highly recommend keeping a line that is pure. That's just my opinion. I think it would be really nice. I mean, it's not hard to find pure emerii or pure any of these other snakes that I'm going to talk about, so it also would be really nice if we made sure to keep that Kaschi at least keep some around that are not mixed with corn snakes. But Kaschi, they're very similar looking to corn snakes as far as the sort of blotchiness of their pattern and the shape of their head and body. But they're a little bit more of a brown color. They're a little less brightly colored. Most corn snakes, even if you see a wild corn snake, it's going to be like red on maybe a tan or an orange, or maybe like an orange on a tan, something like that. But the Slowinskii are going to be mostly like a brown on brown or a brown on tan. They are not a very brightly colored snake, but when you do mix them in with something like a snow corn snake, those snows end up looking really, really interesting. One thing that I do really like about the sort of snow version of the corn Slowinskii hybrid is that I feel like the Slowinskii really adds sort of this layer of sort of a peachy toned color to it. I don't want to say like peach because like peach is a corn snake mutation, but it does add sort of this interesting layer of color to the corn snake, like to the snow, that you just wouldn't expect to see. And I haven't seen too many of this cross, like I haven't seen too many different types of these, but I imagine we'll start seeing more and more as time goes on. The next type of sort of section of snakes that I want to talk about that are intergrades with corn snakes, or can be intergrades with corn snakes, is the Pantherodon Upsalata section. So we talked about how corn snakes are part of this Pantherodon, and then obviously we have the Emerii and the Slowinskii. But we also have this Pantherodon Upsalata, or Upsalata, I'm sorry, I always say it wrong, Upsalata, that has other subspecies that are all really, really closely related to each other, but also closely related to corn snakes enough that they can interbreed. And in many cases, many of these subspecies of the Pantherodon Upsalata will interbreed with corn snakes in the wild. The most sort of, I want to say, famous or notorious version of this is the gray rat snake, which is Upsalata spiloides, if I'm saying that right. I'm not super great at saying all these terms, but I'm doing my best here. That is the gray rat snake, and the reason that it's sort of notorious is because of the ultra G mutation. I talked about how the scaleless came from breeding with an Emerii, and so the ultra G mutation has been considered to be the result of a breeding with a gray rat snake. Now this is not 100% confirmed, it kind of is, but it's also kind of not. And when I say that, I mean the history is real muddy, really fuzzy. So the original producer of the ultra G mutation did in fact come out and say that it is most likely a hybrid. However, he does believe that it came from a naturally occurring intergrade. And I think that that is just as good of a story as any. I don't know if it was, you can't purposely just create a gene mutation out of nowhere. It doesn't work like that. You can't just breed two snakes and be like, I'm purposely going to make this happen. Unless you are in a lab and doing all kinds of things, you're not going to just make that happen like that. So it's highly possible that the ultra gene mutation came from a naturally occurring intergrade between a corn snake and a gray rat snake. And they are, like I said, still within that Pantherodon umbrella, but it's Pantherodon Upsalata spiloides being the sort of subspecies name of that. Now, there are other types of Upsalata, and I'll get into those, that corn snakes also can interbreed with. Some they will interbreed with naturally more frequently than others. So, for example, one that it probably won't breed with naturally very often is the Texas rat snake. Texas rat snakes are mostly obviously in Texas, so you're not going to have much crossover between those. However, you will see some with maybe a black rat snake or the Everglades rat snake, or maybe even a yellow rat snake. It's not going to be as common with some of those, but those all can breed with corn snakes, have bred with corn snakes. The Texas rat snake probably will not reach a corn snake in the wild, so that's going to be technically, it's not really going to be an intergrade, just because a Texas rat snake is not really going to interact with a corn snake. They're just too far apart on the map, really. But the other Upsalata species can and do cross over a very similar area to corn snakes, and sometimes will have an opportunity to interbreed with each other, and they will more naturally than you know, say something like a corn snake and a milk snake. There are like milk snake species, eastern milk snakes, that occur in the wild in a very similar area to where corn snakes will, but they're so far apart in their taxonomy that they generally aren't going to breed together. Now, that doesn't mean it's not possible, but they're less likely to breed together because they don't have, you know, as similar pheromones or stuff like that. So you're just not going to see a natural corn snake, king snake, or corn snake, milk snake cross like that. You might see a natural corn snake rat snake cross if it runs in these like kinds of rat snakes. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and list these off for you guys, these different Upsalata subspecies, so that you can see what they look like and what their hybrids look like with corn snakes. If I can find photos, there is not always going to be photos available of every single hybrid. Sometimes it's either they're just too difficult to find, or they might be lost somewhere, like a website that was shut down, or who knows. Like, there's a lot of different reasons why I may not be able to find a photo, but I will do my best. So obviously we talked about the gray rat snake. Many people call this combination the frosted corn snake. That's not a term that's really used very much anymore, but it has been used in the past. The black rat snake is somewhat common. One of my favorite crosses actually is the Everglades rat snake with the corn snake. I think this combination looks really, really interesting. Yellow rat snakes with corn snakes, a little less common, but still does happen sometimes. And then obviously the Texas rat snake with the corn snake, even less common, but still very cool. I hope that you enjoyed that video on the Intergrades. I'm sorry that this was kind of choppy and weird. This was one of the most difficult videos I have ever made, so it was a little like funky at times, but thank you again for watching. Please subscribe, and if you are interested in seeing anything that I have for sale, sarahsnakeshop.com is my website, and you can also follow me on Facebook, Sarah Snake Shop, and I also have an Instagram and a TikTok. Those are both going to be Joy Princess Sarah, all one word. So thank you guys again for watching. I will see you in the next hybrids video next week.